the screen as well. So if anyone joins us later, we can catch them up. But thanks all for being here. I know summer is still happening, and so it's hard to think about this kind of process, but I know a lot of you are eager to get started on the process, and we want to help you with that. So that's why we're doing these webinars, and I'm recording these webinars to help you get started if you find that you have some extra time to do that. So I'm going to start sharing my screen because most of this is going to be a presentation. And there will also be a live, component to it where I'll be logging into Common App and Naviance. But a lot of this will be visual to help you see and understand just the protocols that we're going through here at Chatham, especially with things now that we're becoming more dependent on that online element as well. So for today, I understand we might have people at varying different levels of the process, but we want to make sure that we understand, how to create a Common App account. I'm sure you guys can do that with your eyes closed, but also filling out certain parts of the Common App that we need to fill out before we match accounts and do all these other things that help us get set up through Naviance and through Common App. So I will show those. Again, we'll talk about letters of recommendation, Common App, transcripts, Naviance, all that good stuff, FERPA, which I'll explain in more detail. So first, before we go into the specifics, I do want to point out that the college application has many factors. I think most of you do know this, but I really like to break it out for students so it's easier to digest. So this is what I call the anatomy of an application package. Everything that you see on the border there outlines or elements that go into your application. So for example, a school profile that you see at the top there, that is a description and an overview of what Chatham High School is like, our demographics, what the town is like, grades and normal test scores, because every admissions counselor, before they review your application, they read the school profile of that school so they can understand and review you in the context of your school. Because, a student from Chatham High School might be very different from a student from a high school in Texas, right? So they need to get that context, and that's a school profile. Some of these elements you see around here, your counselor is responsible for submitting. So the school profile is something that we as counselors submit. But your application, your essay, your test scores, those are things that you will have to submit. So you do have to go back and forth and keep organized what things are important for you and you need to be submitting, and then your counselor will be doing. The secondary school report is very similar in the school profile as well, but everything else on this application anatomy page here, you likely are familiar with and have at varying levels of responsibility for you to be doing. So you hear us talking a lot about Common App, and you might be aware there are many other application platforms out there. The reason why we talk about Common App and why we ask every student at Chatham who's applying to colleges to create one is Naviance and Common App work together, so they talk to each other. One of the steps I'm going to go through today is showing you how to match your account from Naviance to Common App so that they can talk together. So basically that means any activities you do in Naviance, we can send documents through Naviance to your Common App school. So it's the easiest process for you and also is the most streamlined for us as counselors. So we absolutely 100% recommend the Common App. A majority, if not all of your schools will use the Common App. As of last year, there were 897 colleges that used it, and I know a bunch more got on this year, so we're probably close to 1,000. So there's a really high chance you have a school that uses it. So just do that. It's the easiest streamlined process and makes your life easier, which is what we want. The Coalition for College is an application platform you might have heard from seniors or friends who are graduated. This is a newer platform. It's similar to the Common App, but it doesn't have an integration with Naviance. So this is for that reason we don't recommend using Coalition. So it's not as easy as clicking a button and sending your documents through. There's a bunch more steps and it makes more work for you, and then also again for your counselor and our staff. So it's not recommended to use. Sometimes there are colleges that only use the Coalition application. To my knowledge, the only college that only uses Coalition is the University of Washington. So if you're applying there, then you're using Coalition, but if you're not, we highly recommend you use the Common App. There also are applications that colleges create on their own, so institutional apps. Some of the most common ones are like Rutgers or the University of California, so like UCLA or UC Berkeley. So they have their own system that you need to create an account and you log in and you fill that out. Now, Rutgers has a Common App account too, so you could do whichever way is easier, hint, hint, Common App. But sometimes you have to, like the UC system, you have to use their institutional app to do so. And then a lot of colleges nowadays are doing what's called a self-reported academic record. It's short for SRAR. And Penn State is an example of a school that is a very common school for us at Chatham, and they use the SRAR. What that basically is when you're filling out the application, once you're done, they'll send you a link to the self-reported academic record and ask you to enter in your grades yourself. So you could get your transcript from your counselor, a PDF, have it sent to you, and then you'll fill in all your grades from the past couple years. That way they can view your grades ahead of time before a transcript gets submitted. They are obviously trusting you that you're being honest in what you're inputting, because they will get the transcript eventually, and if it doesn't correlate, they know that you were fibbing. So it's important to fill that out accurately, but it usually helps colleges make decisions faster if they can see that. So the SRAR is becoming more and more popular. Penn State, I believe Rutgers uses it as well, but last year was one of the bigger years for it. So keep an eye out on that. I don't want that to be the first time you see it when you finish an application, so that you're aware. So for creating a Common App, pretty simple stuff. You'll log into the website link. Make sure you're using an email address that you'll check often. And if you want to be using that after your time at CHS, sometimes people use Common App to be a transfer student or something. Don't use your Chatham. Maybe use a Gmail or a personal account. Save your password, put it in your phone. You're going to access it a lot, and especially if we're at school and you come into my office or your counselor's office, the first thing we'll likely say is, can you log into your Common App? And it's frustrating when you can't get in there. Life is a series of setting and resetting passwords, so I get it. And the first thing that we really will need to do is filling in the education section and adding a college. That is a first step that allows us to match our accounts. So I'm going to go switch over to the Common App here. When you're in the Common App, this is my student account, you will go on over to the My Colleges section, and you'll see a listing of all of your schools here. You also will see the Common App tab. This is the actual application. So this is, pretend like these are all pages, right? Like printed out pages. This is the actual stuff that you're submitting. The great thing about the Common App, you fill it out once, just one finger, you fill it out once, and you're able to submit all that information to all those schools that are in your My Colleges. So the most important section on here for our matching is the education section. In the education section, it will ask you information about Chatham High School. So in order to match your account between Naviance and Common App, you have to fill in the Chatham information in your Common App, because otherwise they won't know to match your accounts together. So what I have shared out, and I can share and show you where that lives too on Naviance, is we have a document that helps you kind of see like questions and answers about which questions that are common. So for example, students might want to know, what is the class size? That is 362. So that document will show you that. I don't have that pulled up right now, but I will show it to you on Naviance. So it's like commonly FAQ questions to help you fill out the education section. So that is a really great resource for you to be able to do that. So on the Common App as well, after you fill out the education section, we're also going to be working on FERPA, and that is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So FERPA is an important piece, and the reason why it comes up in the conversation for college applications is this FERPA law and act regulates the privacy of your student records. It basically gives you the right to review your letters of recommendation that teachers and counselors have written about you. What we do in the college process, and is very standard across the board, is we tell students to waive their right to review the letters of recommendation. And the reason we do that is if a college knows you're not reading that recommendation or haven't read it, then they can be assured that the information in that letter is really honest, it's candid, and it's truthful. Sometimes teachers or counselors will not write a letter of recommendation if they know you intend to read it, because again, really, we want to make sure it's an authentic letter. And so by waiving your right, that guarantees to a college that you reading it doesn't jeopardize or change what might be going into the letter or influence it in a positive or negative way. The good thing about this and why it's not a problem to waive your right is that we know we're asking teachers that are helpful and had said yes to us to write. And so if they didn't think they could write a good letter or say nice things about you, they likely would have declined to write you a letter of rec, right? So it's always, you can rest assured that that waiving your right is not a bad thing. In fact, it's the standard process. In my time working in college admissions, and then here, I maybe like once a student didn't waive their right, which was not recommended. So again, it's highly recommended. And if you have questions specifically, myself, your counselor can talk more in depth about it, because I know it's a little counterintuitive. So when you're on the Common App, I have the screenshots here I'm going to show you so we stay in the slides. Again, you just saw the My Colleges tab. You're going to click on a school that you have. You need to have at least one school in there. So it could just be a dummy school. You could just add in any school in there. And then you'll click on that school and you'll see the Recommenders in FERPA section. It will bring you to the Complete Release Authorization form, that blue button. It will bring you to instructions. This was on that original screen we talked about. So it explains, again, how FERPA regulates and relates to your college application and all those different kind of questions. The FERPA form then will bring you to the questions about, okay, sorry, we have an announcement from the main office. So back to this, announcement is over. So the FERPA form release authorization is having you agree to waive that right. And then the last checkbox here is that you understand you're waiving your right, and that applies to all schools on your Common App. So for example, if you're applying to 10 schools, you don't have to do this 10 separate times. It will do it for all of them, which is really nice. And so the end goal you'll see here is you want a green check mark right next to your recommenders in FERPA. So that is definitely an important step that we want to make sure you are doing. You can't match your account until you do that step. Additionally, on the same topic, we do have a Chatham High School records release form for parents and guardians. So not for students. Students, you're doing the Common App end. This Google form is for parents and guardians. Because not only should they be in the conversation about this, they definitely should, but we also need to get consent and have permission to send your documents to colleges. So if you request a transcript, but we don't have this form filled out, we don't have that release, then we won't be able to send your letters of recommendation or your transcript out. So we need that permission. As soon as we get this permission, we check a box off in Naviance that lets us know that we can send your stuff. So this is important and will be sent out in a week or two through School Messenger to parents and guardians, and we'll remind you all students about it too. So just you might need to be on top of your mom or dad or guardian about doing this form, because we can't actually send stuff until it is filled out. So those are the two portions of FERPA. There's the Common App section, and then there's this Google form that is Chatham specific. Again, just an extra reassurance that we can send your stuff. So for Naviance, a lot of the things that we do for the college process is done through Naviance. It's the easiest way to communicate with your counselor, so keeping it up to date is very important. And again, it's how we send a lot of our documents. Naviance, I know you all have been through different variations of Naviance, and they updated more recently last year with a new login procedure, logging in with Clever. So I just want to remind folks about that. So when you go to the student.naviance.com/Chatham, it's going to bring you to the Welcome Chatham High School. You'll click the student backpack, and it's going to bring you to the Welcome Student button here. See this X? You're ignoring it. Don't log in with your email and password. You always need to be clicking Continue with Clever. Your username is your first part of your email. So if I was a student, my email would be caitlinslade@chatham-nj.edu or whatever it is, .org. Yep. And so that would be your first full name, not your full email, and your password is whatever you use to log into your email. So the Clever integration is awesome because it makes life a lot easier, and you don't have to remember a totally separate password. It's just whatever you use for Chatham. So again, if you're having issues logging in, it likely has to do with Clever, but you can always email me and I can help you get in there as well. So what we're going to look at here right now is matching your accounts that I keep talking about. So again, linking your Common App to your Naviance account. In this section, when you click on the colleges I'm applying to section, a hot pink banner will come up here and it says you're not able to apply to Common App schools because your accounts are not matched. On your colleges I'm applying to section, you need, just like with the Common App, you need to have at least one college in this section. So add in any school that you'd like, or if you know of a school you will apply to, add it in there. So you're going to click Match Accounts. And in terms of adding colleges, I should remind this for students too. If you want to move over your colleges, you can either search for a school and add it in that way, or you can, if you have colleges in your colleges I'm thinking about document or section, you can click on the box and click Move to Application List. That's usually the easiest because it just transfers all of your stuff from the I'm thinking about to the I'm applying to. So whatever is easier for you, but again, you have to have at least one college in there to match your account. So when you click that button to match your account, it's going to bring you to a page here, getting started with the Common App. It's going to ask you to enter your Common App email address. So again, it's not necessarily your Chatham email address. It's whatever account you used to create your Common App one, and your date of birth. Very simple. And once you hit match accounts, you will be getting a green banner at the top here that says your Common App has been matched, and that's all good, and that's what we want. So that's a very simple process. I will show you now a couple things on Naviance to walk through and keep an eye out for. So if we're on Naviance, I will first scroll down and show you, I've mentioned this before in previous presentations. We have something called Document Resources, which is inconveniently all the way down at the bottom. It doesn't allow us to move where that is. But if you click on this, I liken it, oh, it logged me out, hold on. And sometimes Naviance logs us out, as it does, right? Okay, so if you go down to the bottom here, there's Document Resources. This is kind of like a Google Drive for students for documents for you to access. So as seniors now, which you all are, in this section you can find different help and different like resources, forms that you might need. So for example, when I was talking about the education section on Common App, and you might need some help with answering questions, you can find that here. And so this document lists all of the important information you need to fill out the education section. So again, like class size, do we wait, your counselor's information. So you can find a bunch of that kind of stuff in the Document Resources. And then our counselors, we have it through Google Drive. We're working on a new website as well to share where you can easily access that information. But for now, these do live in the Documents Resources on the homepage. So what I do want to point out and do an actual live walkthrough is on the colleges section, we're really going to be looking now. Last year as juniors, and even if you're still searching, which is totally fine, there's still so much time, you might spend some time here, but as seniors, we're spending the most of our time here. So you're going to be going into colleges I'm applying to. In this section, I have a bunch of different schools added in here, of course, but this is just my list I'm still playing with. I want to go through each section and tab up here. So under college, obviously, is the college you added. The type you would indicate if you were applying, so an early decision, a regular decision, an early action application. The deadline you'll change when you're editing your school. So for example, on Binghamton, if I click that pencil button and edit, I can change different kind of application types. So if I say I want to actually apply for priority, I can save my college application and it will update for me. Transcripts, we now will be doing transcripts online, which will monitor a couple different things for you and make life a lot easier for transcripts. So you can look through there and you'll be able to see the status. So I requested one from Binghamton and my counselor in this case, quote unquote, sent that already. And I requested Clemson, but my counselor hasn't gotten a chance to send that quite yet. Office materials will also be those kind of, submitting letters of recommendation and documents along those lines. Submission type will be different types of, we'll show you different types of admission types. So for example, the CA with the computer screen is the one we like to see because again, Common App and Naviance work together and they send. So this is us telling Naviance that I'm going to apply to Binghamton, but I'm applying through the Common App. So they like that and we like that too. So again, like I said, you can edit as much as you need to. The more button, you can go to different kind of scattergrams or visit their website. So there are a bunch of different ways to kind of explain all of that. What we're going to look at now is colleges, we're going to look at letters of recommendation. So if I go back to the colleges home tab and I click on the letters of recommendation section, it's going to pull up a couple of different options for me. And so the recommendation actually, so we currently keep the letters of recommendation off for students. That way our teachers have time to log in and get in and update their site. We will have this available to students on August 31st. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is stop sharing my screen and take a pause for a second so we can turn that on to show you and ask if there are any questions for now. Don't be shy, you can speak up if there's anything to go over or questions you have. Okay, I'm gonna turn on the setting then. Let's see, updated that, and I'm also gonna update our transcripts too. Okay, thanks for bearing with me on that. So let me present my screen once again. And when you go back to the college's home, and it logged me out again, sometimes Naviance is a little bit finicky, which I think you all have experienced before in the past, especially with all the new updates that are going on. So in this section here, again, back to the college's home section, you'll scroll down here and you'll click letters of recommendation. When you click that now, since I turned on the feature to request, you'll be able to see that there's an add request button. Under this add request, you'll select the teacher you want writing for you. So let's say I have Miss Camp writing a letter for me. I'm going to choose her name. And on number 2, select what colleges this request is for. You should keep it always at choose specific colleges. The reason why we don't do this one is because I'll show you when you click on it, it doesn't let you choose the colleges you want to send it to. So it defaults to choose specific, and you should always keep it there because as you see here, for example, with Binghamton and Miami University, they only allow one letter of recommendation. So if I want a different letter sent to Binghamton and not Miss Camp's, and I chose this, that Miss Camp's will likely go first. So you want to be able to have choice. So again, we want you to have choice. So choose specific is always the way to go. On this side too, you want to make sure these deadlines are updated as well and make sure they're accurate. So you can see I have a couple that are not accurate, right? So I need to go back before I finish my request and update that. You need to make sure your list is really accurate, and because this is what the teachers are getting sent and they're working off of your the latest or your earliest deadline, excuse me. So you could write in a personal note, saying thank you so much. And also I always recommend following up with an email or in person if you can, and then you'll submit your request. And all of your requests then would now will be shown in your request here. And you can see the different kind of deadlines in updates. Callie, good question. I see that you have the don't add request button. You likely have to refresh because I had to turn on the ability to request letters of recommendation because currently, like as soon as we're done with this presentation, we'll be turning off the request for letter of rec and also transcripts because we need to give some time for Naviance to completely update and our teachers to get logged back in. So we'll wait on Monday the 31st is when I'll turn these on for everyone and students can start requesting. So we just got to
yeah, 'cause I was refreshing it and like nothing's really changing on my screen.
Oh, maybe it might make you log out.
Okay, I'll try that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, so that's for our letters of recommendation. One other point I like to point out as well is when we talk about letters of recommendation is the Common App will sometimes ask you to submit letters of recommendation on behalf of students. So like recommenders and FERPA. We do not use Common App for the recommenders. We only use Naviance. We are lucky enough to have Naviance, so we only use that platform. So do not be using Common App. If you do, a teacher will likely send back to you saying, please go back in and request through Naviance, because that's the only official way. So another point as well is just asking your teacher isn't enough. You again have to go in and hit that actual request button, because once you do that, it will get sent to your teacher. They'll get an email, and then they have it in their system to upload when they are ready. There also additionally, this was in the document resources. This is a step-by-step instruction of how to request letters of recommendation that I just went through. And I'll also have a video that will be shared too, like a quick 2-3 minute video of how to do it as well. So there's a lot of resources to help if you don't remember how to do it through Naviance. So the other section is the transcripts, requesting transcripts. So we are now going to be doing the requesting of transcripts online. So again, under the Apply to Colleges section, there's a Manage Transcripts button, and it will bring you to, John, I will answer your question after I finish this. I see your question, thank you. So you'll go to the transcript section here, and you'll see a pink plus sign. When you click that, you'll click College Application Transcript. You're requesting an initial transcript. And then you will choose to hit the arrow down, and any school that is in your college I'm applying to list will show up here. So let's say I want to send it to Marist. I will hit done. I hit request and finish, and it will pull that request up for me here. It will say that's pending. So for example, as I said earlier, on the colleges I'm applying to list, you could see that I had applied to Binghamton and that my counselor already sent it. You can see they sent it on 8/18. Again, this is just for an example. I am the counselor, so I'm playing around with it. But in all of your requests, you'll be able to see the different kind of deadlines and pending dates that come through. So for example, like Clemson has an old date in here. This is why we need some time for Naviance to update a little bit before the school year starts, and why we don't turn this on quite yet. So requesting transcripts is very simple in doing that. So what happens when you do request is your counselor will get an email, and they're able to track how many you request, and they will be able to log on and push that request through. So I know, John, you had a question. If we ask someone outside of school to write a college letter of recommendation, how do they go about submitting it? Great question. So the only exception for this invite recommenders is if you have someone who does not work at Chatham High School. So thank you for reminding me to clarify that. If you have a non-Chatham teacher coach, if you have someone like a clergy member, a boss that doesn't have a Chatham email address, you will invite them through this button. But most of the time, most of our students across the board are using Chatham teachers, hence why we emphasize the using Naviance. But that's a great question. So there are very small exceptions for when we'll use it, but we just like to keep it as simple for our teachers as possible, because it can be confusing when they get requests from Coalition, Common App, Naviance, too many, right? They're very busy to begin with. So that brings me to the other point about transcripts is these take a lot of, okay, let me see. Emma also has a question. Hi, Emma. In the colleges I'm applying to section, one of my schools is not showing up on that list. Is that normal? It's possible that Naviance is currently like updating that school, or the school is updating them. It might require a refresh or a login, but I will have office hours at the end of this that if you want to hop on and we can try to look at it, or send me an email. But that could be just a Naviance glitch because it's getting back into the swing of the school year like we all are. Okay, so then transcript request deadlines. We share this out as for a counseling department because we like to give you all a good frame of reference for when you should make your transcript request by. So for example, October 15th is one of those earlier college deadlines. So we're going to ask that you submit your transcript request by September 23rd. The reason for that is a date that ensures that your counselor will have enough time to submit your transcript so that it gets there before October 15th. We can't be having students request transcripts on October 14th and then expect for it to be sent by October 15th, right? So we need to make sure we're giving our staff and our counselors and our teachers, this is a good rule of thumb for letters of rec as well, time to process all of that information, because you aren't the only student that is on their caseload, right? They work with plenty of other students that they need to manage on top of what is, they have other job responsibilities too. So we want to make sure you're giving those students, the staff, enough time to do that. So I say this is a good frame of reference. So you're working backwards about 15 days, 15 school days too. So if we have a day off, you have to factor that in. That doesn't count towards our days. So keep this in mind for your deadlines of, I need to make sure I have these requests in for 3 schools that have a November 1st deadline. So that's just a really important piece we want to make sure you keep in mind. On the Common App this year, there will now be a question about COVID-19 and the disruptions it might have had, or natural disasters that might have had a lasting impact on you as a student. This has been a question for natural disasters like tornadoes, hurricanes, and so it's been on the Common App for a while, but it now includes the COVID-19, which obviously has affected all of us. When we talk about this question, I think it's a good recommendation to ask your counselor or myself if you should be filling this out, because unless there was a very significant, very impactful moment that separates you from the reality of almost every student in this circumstance, then maybe you could click yes and fill information out about it. But it's important to just assess, personally, this is going to be not a general answer for every student. So it might be a good idea to talk one-on-one with us about whether or not we think, or let's collaborate on whether or not we think that you should be answering that question. So the reality of this situation is it's very real and absolutely affected everyone. But we want to make sure that you're using this question only if it really significantly impacted or had a very different effect than what colleges already know to be the distance learning and those other impacts that students had. On the same notion, I'll also mention for COVID as an essay topic. It might be very enticing to use that as an essay topic, but I would say a general rule of thumb is, again, if it only had like a significant impact, that's a part of like who you are and a story on your life, which again, it has for all of us, but something that is more significant and unique in a way than the shared experience that we all had, then I would stray away from using that as an essay topic, because we don't want you to be writing an essay that's a dime a dozen, right? We want you to stick out. We want it to be personalized about who you are. And sometimes writing about something so international could really generalize it, and really they're not learning that much about you. So again, anything that has to do with COVID and the impact on you as students, which it obviously has had on everyone, don't hesitate to talk to me or to your counselor about, how should I approach this? Do you think this is significant or unique? And should I add that as an essay or answer this kind of question? So for test scores, on the same topic with COVID-19, obviously there are many students out there, not just at Chatham, across the board, that might not have SAT or ACT scores at this time. And that's all right, because we know as an industry in higher education that accessibility is not your fault, right? There are things and factors outside of your control that won't allow you to take tests, maybe to a certain extent. So I'll talk about that a little bit more about test optional. But the first things I do want to say, so let's say you do have a test score or you do take a test in a month or two and you want to submit that, that's on you as a student. So you need to log into, the ACT site or the College Board site, and you request them to be submitted to the school officially. Some schools nowadays, which are awesome, they self-report, just like that self-reported academic record. They ask you to self-report your test score. So again, it's an issue of honesty. If you report that you got a 36 on your ACT, and then when you get accepted to that school and they ask to see the official score and they notice it's very much not a 36, they would rescind your offer of admission, right? So you need to be honest in reporting that. This again is twofold. It allows you to save money because sending reports to schools from the ACT or SAT costs money, unfortunately. And then it allows them to make a decision faster as well. So self-reporting is much more common nowadays. So I always say, double check that first before you just blanket go into ACT and pay the money to submit all those scores. Take your list of maybe 10 schools and see, of those 10, which one self-report, and then of those 10, which one do I have to send officially? It will save you a lot of money and time in the long run. So again, going back to the conversation about test optional and test blind admissions. Fairtest.org has stated as of August 13th, which was quite a few days ago now, that over 60% of colleges are test optional this fall. In fact, I know at least 4 or 5 just went test optional as of last night. And so they continue to go through as they assess the reality that some students will not have access to taking a test. And again, that's out of your control as students, and that is not your responsibility, nor is it your fault. So a lot of schools over like 1460 or over 1,460 schools are test optional. So we definitely recommend that you look into the different policies of the schools on your list. And NACAC, which is the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, recently just put out a statement saying, that test optional does in fact mean test optional, that students will not be penalized for not having test scores. There are other factors that go into reviewing a student application, and a lot of colleges across the board have been test optional for years. So I used to work at Ithaca College as an admissions counselor, and we've been test optional for double-digit years because we looked at more other factors. So a lot of colleges are looking into maybe scheduling more interviews or one-on-one conversations, or having more writing supplements in their application to make up for maybe a lack of a test score. Again, if you want to talk about what the best strategy is for you, talk to me or your school counselor about, this is the reality. I have this test score, or I don't have any test scores. Let's talk about what works best for you. And then I also like to remind that the best resource is also to go right to the school. So let's say you are looking at Clemson University and you have questions, you want to know what their policy is about, or you want to get their opinion on whether or not you should submit or try to take the test in November or something along those lines. Reach out to the Clemson rep. I have contacts for most of our colleges that you can ask them specifically about your circumstance, because every student across the board is going to have a very different circumstance. So always go right to the source and reach out to them. So I do want to go through a couple common road bumps from last year. Use the Common App if you can, right? I'm like a broken record. And the transcript request, now that we're doing it online, please make sure that every school you have applied to has a request in there. If there's no request in there for, let's say, Clemson again, then your counselor, Ms. Murphy, won't know to send that through. So you need to have a request for every school. Your Naviance list should be updated before you submit this form. So there's no rush to submitting the form, the transcript request, as long as you keep those deadlines in mind. But on the transcripts, you want to make sure the Naviance list has the accurate deadlines and dates so your counselor can send them appropriately. Letters of recommendation, I'll also have a few reminders on the next slide, is you're not requesting letters of recommendation through other platforms unless, like John pointed out, that you have a letter of rec from someone outside of Chatham. We'll submit through different ways. Once you request the letters, you should really be in touch with your teachers. Communication is best and key. Over communicating is always much better than under communicating. So talk with them and thank them for their time, because a lot of our teachers are writing this after school, on the weekends, over the summer, and so they are really doing us and our students a really excellent favor for helping with that. One point, the asterisk at the bottom is, you keep hearing me say Naviance and Common App match together. Unfortunately, the one thing is the Common App list needs to be updated on Naviance too. So just because on your Common App list it shows all the schools, it won't update on Naviance. So you have to enter them both times on that. And again, a reminder, the transcript request forms and the letter of recommendation request, that ability will be turned on Monday, August 31st. And we will not be starting school, as you all know, until September 8th. So you might put in a request on August 31st or September 1st, but do know that these will not be processed until at least September 8th, because we need to wait for school to start and have those the staff in to be able to process those. Again, there's no rush in this process, because as long as you submit your application, supplementary materials such as transcripts and letters of recommendation can follow up at a later time, as long as they're all in before the deadline. So a couple letter of recommendation reminders that we had from last year. Again, the deadlines are so important. So I have a good example over here. It has all accurate deadlines listed. It has all the recommenders they asked to recommend, and then you can see the status that they were all submitted. So this is a very good letter of rec page. We like that. Thumbs up. And then again, if you don't have the colleges in your colleges I'm applying to list on Naviance and you request a letter of recommendation, you're going to get a message here, or your teacher will get a message here saying we can't submit the document because it's not in their Common App list. So again, you have to make sure your list on Naviance is accurate and then your list on Common App is accurate as well. Brenda had a great question. Do we also need to request a letter of rec from our counselors? Excellent question. Letters of recommendation from your counselors go automatically. So you do not need to request a letter of recommendation. So if you remember, if we go back to letters of recommendation, I'll show one here. You can see, if you remember, you can see the different deadlines and what's allowed. So for example, Binghamton only allows one. That doesn't mean the counselor's letter goes in that place. The counselor letter is not included in this count. So let's say there's 3 for Ithaca College. That means ultimately 4, right? 1 for your counselor, and then you have the other ones that you can add for a teacher or, a coach or something like that. So good question. Your letter of rec will automatically go because your counselor works on that brag sheet that you worked on last year. Excuse me, not share. The brag sheet that you worked on last year, and then any conversations you want to have with them about what you think would go into the letter. So good question, Brenda. This only applies to requesting for teachers. And actually, when you go down to the drop-down menu, if you forget this, your counselor won't even be listed there, so you don't have to worry about accidentally requesting it of them. Okay, so this was a lot of information. And in summary, I just want to, give you kind of a wrap-up of some questions and help you answer some questions, and we'll have time to do that as well. So once we send that out, have your parents or guardians submit that online release authorization form. Again, a reminder, that's the Google form that gives us permission to then send your documents to the schools. Senior conference information will be coming out in a week or so you can have a one-on-one conversation with your counselor about your college list, applications, different questions that you want to talk about. So that's really important as well. You're going to fill out your transcript requests when they become available, and when you have your list updated, you can start working on your college applications. Like I said, you can still submit them without your transcript or letter of recommendation. Those supplementary materials will follow up after. And then you can find all this information and these forms on the document resources on Naviance. And if you have we'll be sending an update about a website to find all this information as well. And then you can always ask your counselor too, because we have them as Google Docs and PDFs that we can easily send. So we do have, I do have office hours coming up, and then obviously during the school day, if you are in school, you can obviously stop by A110. If you are not going to be physically in school, we can set up Google Meets and conversations, phone calls. So there's a couple different options that we can talk through. So I will add in the chat the code for my office hours that I'll be on until about 1 o'clock. But right now, before I do go to those office hours, are there any questions for the good of the group? You can either turn on your mic or put that in the chat box. All right, it doesn't seem like there's any questions. So like I said, this has been recorded. We will send out a recording of this all. And if you want to join and you have specific questions, feel free to hop onto my office hours. And again, the code is Slate Office Hours for Google Meet. And we will all talk soon. But thank you for joining us, and don't hesitate to reach out and enjoy the rest of summer, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.